Mark off your calendar January. That's when Casey Anthony's murder trial is set to begin. Today it took less than a minute for a judge in Florida to arraign the mother in connection with her missing daughter. That trial starts exactly January 5th. That's what they're saying now anyway. But what if police don't find little Caylee? Prosecutors are going for murder one without a body. So do they have enough time to build their case? Back with us again, Prime News law enforcement analyst Mike Brooks. Also with us, Marva Hinton, reporter from WDBO Radio in Orlando, and Florida attorney Mark Eiglarsh. Mark, let's start with you. All right, January 5th trial date. Is that enough time to piece together a murder case without a body?
Don't even use ink on that one. Just pencil it in. Okay. That's going to be continued. I'm 99.999% sure. I've never seen a homicide in 16 years go to trial in such a short period of time. There's forensic evidence. The defense is going to be discovering this case, I think, for a year, 2 years.
So give us a realistic time then when this trial could begin.
Well, the defense is always free to demand a speedy trial, but that's just not going to happen in a case like this. Cases for the defense always get better with age, just like wine. I suspect that they'll take their time on this, interview every single witness. There's very liberal discovery rules here in Florida, so they'll interview all the witnesses that the prosecution has to turn over. They'll take their time. I'm going to predict 18 months to 2 years.
Wow. Okay, Marva, what are you hearing? Are you hearing we have the January 5th start date, but your sources telling you that it could be a lot longer, as Mark's suggesting?
Right. We're not expecting it to actually happen in January as the judge set the date today. But we haven't heard anything officially from Jose Baez if he's going to waive Casey's right to a speedy trial and try to, push it in the future. We haven't heard anything from him today.
Mark or Marva, either one. When will we know if it's a death penalty case? Will we know that soon?
We're going to know within the next 2 months. Prosecutors are going to announce that. I'm going to predict. I'll tell you why I think that they're probably going to seek death. It's easier to get a conviction in a case when you're death qualifying a jury. In other words, if you're seeking the death penalty, you get to ask jurors, could you impose the ultimate sanction of death? Well, amazingly, those who are not interested in seeking the death penalty will be disqualified. Those who could seek the death penalty are sat, and they're more likely to convict. They're more conservative.
All right, Mike, let's talk about some of the evidence that we've talked about. Let's piece it together again for our viewers. We've got a hair from the trunk, and it's from, this way I understand it, it's from a dead body. It's either Caylee or Casey's. Casey's still alive, so it's little Caylee's. We have significant levels of chloroform in the car.
Very high levels, yeah.
Is that enough? What more do we need here, Mike?
There's a lot of other evidence, I think, Mike, that we have not heard of that probably came out of grand jury. But I think, you look at that hair. Now, mitochondrial DNA is going to be used on this particular piece of hair with what they call the death band that shows decomposition. Now, as you said, it can either be Caylee's or Casey's or the mother or Lee. Now, everybody else is alive except for one person, and that's Caylee Anthony. So, who does that belong to? That's kind of, I think that's kind of a no-brainer. Of course, the experts on DNA are going to fight this. We've heard one doctor who's on an integration on a regular basis, Kobalinski, who's working for the defense, already tried to throw some reasonable doubt in there, especially last night. But I don't think there's any way he's going to be able to beat that.
All right, let's pick up on that. Mark, we just talked about evidence. Is there any evidence you could see that doesn't make it to trial?
Well, they do have to have a hearing as to whether they're going to introduce the decomposition air samples. All of that will be tested. It's possible the judge doesn't let it in unless it passes what they call a Fry test. But here's the bigger picture, Mike. Assuming all of what we heard comes into evidence, still, I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. Why is this first degree versus second? Why is this second-degree murder versus manslaughter? Why isn't this a tragic accident that she tried to cover up? I still have not heard one piece of evidence that convinces me or potentially the jurors beyond a reasonable doubt that this happened like this, like this, like this.
But Mark, why hadn't she cooperated with police from day one if it was an accident?
Listen, she will never babysit my children. I think she's sociopathic. I think she's a liar. I think she probably had something to do with it. But who cares what I think? In a court of law, the question is what proof can the prosecutors put forward to suggest it was her that committed first as opposed to second, as opposed to manslaughter, as opposed to covering up a tragic accident.
Mike, you seeing first-degree murder here? Do you think that case can be made? Personally, I think it's the tragic accident theory. That's what and I'm sure a lot of viewers agree with that. What are you seeing, Mike?
You know, it could have been a tragic accident, and if that was the case, she should have just come forward right then and said, look, I made a mistake. It was an accident. I didn't mean to do it, but she has not cooperated whatsoever, so I think that's one of the reasons they're going after first. And Mike, I think they have enough right now to go for first degree, even though they don't have a body. Now, in light of that, November 8th is going to be a big date. That's when Tim Miller and the people from Texas EquiSearch are going to go back to that one area where they were able to triangulate a number of cell phone pings over on that particular date where they think that the murder may have occurred to the time that she may have gotten rid of the body, and is back in this area down by the airport. And they're going to start planning that on the 7th, and they're asking for all kinds of volunteers, and they have thousands of people who have already committed to coming back there on November 8th to start that search.
Mike, I have tremendous respect for Mike Brooks, but we're not looking at the same evidence here. I do not see how the government gets to first degree as opposed to second. I don't see it.
But okay, Mark, if first degree, let's say that she went ahead and soaked a rag. One of the theories, soaked a rag full of chloroform and set it next to her, sit it next to Caylee's body in that trunk, and she died in that trunk.
Quick answer, Mark, we got to run.
Yeah, we could say it all day long. What does the evidence show? I don't see it yet.
All right, guys.
We haven't seen all the evidence, though, Mark. Mark my word.
We'll have to continue this another time. Thank you so much.